welcoming us. Thank you, Anne, for joining us.
Pleasure.
Anne is President International for Mastercard. In that position, she's responsible for the management of all countries outside the US and Canada. And the really exciting part of her career was in the beginning. After her graduation from university, she was an award-winning engineer, and she was the first woman working offshore in Britain. And what happened then? Then suddenly you decided that you want to go inside the boring banking system. What happened?
No, well, British Gas privatized the company that I was working for, and I could see that the people taking over the company seemed to have a lot of financial acumen. So I thought, maybe I've got the wrong training. I should go and retrain as a banker. So that's what happened.
That's what happened. Then you worked for Citigroup. After you worked for Alvarez and Marsal in London, managing the Lehman business right after the financial crisis, which must have been a very exciting period for you in your career. Mm-hmm. And you also had high positions with ABN AMRO. So, but Anne, what we are talking about right here on stage is financial inclusion. You're very passionate about that topic. But if you look at the industry as a whole, how good or how successful have you been so far in including those on the lowest rung?
I think the industry's been pretty successful. Certainly the World Bank has produced stats that said since 2011, an extra 500 million people have been included in the financial system. And I actually think those stats are out of date now, so it's probably bigger than that today. So I think there's been quite a global push for this, and it's been pushed by governments and NGOs and many different partnerships.
Mm-hmm. But doesn't access alone miss the point? Isn't the real problem that those people have is that they don't have money?
I don't think that people necessarily don't have money. I think they don't necessarily have money inside the financial system. I mean, even if you look at different parts of Africa and India and so on, you know, people are farmers, they're growing things, they're selling their goods, but they have no means of being paid electronically. So it's not a question of not having money, or it's not a question of not having work. It's just, is it inside the system? And on the subject of access, by the way, I think education's really important. When we created Mastercard, we put 10% of our stock into a foundation at that time, which was our stock was worth 5 billion, so we put 500 million into the foundation. Today, our stock is, our market cap is worth about 136 billion. So our foundation is, over 13 billion, which makes it one of the biggest in the world. And that focuses on education as well as microfinance and so on. I think you have to have education and inclusion, because if you have access without education, it's pretty dangerous. But if you have education with access, that's totally pointless. So those two things are really needed to create a better world.
It does create maybe a better world, but it also does expand the business of Mastercard, doesn't it?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we talk about this quite a lot to say, look, we're in the business of connecting up consumers, giving them financial products that can link them to the banking system, working through banks or working through governments or working through retailers and different organizations. And so it absolutely fits with our business model that we include more people in the financial system. But if you think about that, instead of just having a pure philanthropic view of it, we actually have a sustainable business model that makes sense. So that says, even if the financial climate wasn't great and your business wasn't doing so great, you would still invest in it, because it actually is a strategic goal for the company to reach so many people. And I think that sustainability of business models is what really drives things to be successful. You shouldn't have people waiting to see whether you're going to be philanthropic tomorrow or next week. It should be something that's good for all.
How important is technology for financial inclusion?
I think it's absolutely fundamental because inclusion often starts with digital identity. You know that people are born all over the world and their births aren't registered. People don't have passports, they don't have driving licenses, particularly women. And so if you can give people a digital identity, that's a fantastic starting point. And that means things like linking their fingerprints to a chip, maybe their voice recognition, maybe their iris, whatever it is. Again, that fits very well with our business model. And, you know, it then sort of moves into the developing world in terms of different forms of biometric authentication. So in the developed world, you know, you're trying to maybe get more young people to adopt technology and financial inclusion. And so you move to something like selfie pay, because we're told that millennials take 5 selfies a day on average, which I was laughing and saying at my age, you don't even want to photograph, never mind doing selfies all day. But selfie pay is a way of authenticating yourself, and it's fun, so it causes adoption.
Mm-hmm. But is technology really the only tool to get people financially included? Because the access to technology does also cost money, so there might be a gap between, for example, cities and the rural sphere. How can you...
Yeah, no, technology is just an enabler. The point you raised at the beginning was people have got to have money. Money's pretty fundamental. What we find is in most countries in the world, the governments are giving their people money, either through benefits payments, it can be pension payments, it can be child allowance, all sorts of things. So often it starts with working with the government to say you want to give the benefits, you want to give them to the right people in your economy. So let's get people digitally enabled so they can receive their benefits electronically. And in places like Kenya, we launched a whole Huduma card where people can pay the government. You know, they can pay taxes and they can pay things like that from the card, and the government can pay the individual everything that they're entitled to in terms of their different benefits. So you create a two-way flow.
And how do you feel? How are you feeling to those who have excessive APR charges and thus perpetuating the circle of debt, especially when it comes to low-income families who struggle to break free from the circle?
Yeah, we talked about it. I think that in the case of the way that the financial system works, very few countries in the world, and remember that I look after about 210 countries, very few are credit-based economies. Credit-based economies tend to be markets like America, like Britain, and Australia. When you go into even most of Europe is a debit-based economy. A debit-based economy, you can't spend more than you have because money comes direct out of your bank account. And then in the emerging markets, it's much more of a prepaid economy. People are used to actually topping up their telephones before they use the minutes. That is a form of stored value. And that is what the financial system is moving to in those countries. And for example, a government giving a citizen a card or loading up their telephone with money for benefits, that's a prepayment. So I think that the regulators, the banks, the financial systems are looking at ways of avoiding, you know, putting people into difficult situations in terms of debt.
You're not only passionate about financial inclusion, but also about gender. Does financial inclusion help women more than men?
It definitely does, because without doubt, women are more excluded than men in the financial system. And also, you know, we work with different people in different parts of the world. And we have a lab in Africa that we funded with the Gates Foundation. And many of the farmers in Africa are actually women. But it's hard for them to sell their crops direct to the buyer. So we've actually launched a technology product that we're rolling out across Tanzania and parts of Kenya right now, where the women, well, not just women farmers, but all farmers can sell things like edible oil, sunflower oil, direct to the buyer through their telephone. And whether they've got a smartphone or whether they've got an Android phone, they can get the price of the oil 6 times a day. Imagine putting that power into the hands of farmers. The reason I bring that up in context of women is many of the farmers are women, and this will be the first time that they can actually receive money for their goods electronically, and actually allows them to sell at a price they want to sell at instead of having to negotiate with a middleman. All of these things can be achieved when you think about financial inclusion.
And when it comes to Mastercard as a company, seeing you here on stage could give one the impression that there is no such thing as a glass ceiling, because you're in the C-suite already. But have you ever experienced in your career a moment where you thought, okay, this happened to me because I'm a woman?
I think, there's been times in my career, like everybody's career, where you've been in the number 2 position and you want the top job, and you don't necessarily get the top job. Is that because you're a man or a woman? I don't know. But I do think sometimes it's easier to get a promotion if you move departments in your company, or you move companies, or you just do something different. And that's the thing that I've experienced in my career.
If you're talking about diversity, it's not only about men and women, it's also about different backgrounds. What does Mastercard do to encourage people from all kinds of backgrounds to engage with you?
Well, first of all, when I joined Mastercard a few years ago, many of our people had just come out of banks because we were owned by the banks. And so we were just predominantly bankers. And actually, we were quite an old company in the sense that, the average age was over 40 in our company. Now, today, we've got 36% millennials. Most people are Gen X, and I think about 11% baby boomers, so that includes me, obviously. And so completely different generational mix we've recruited around the world. And then we started saying, we need people to come in from governments, we need them from retail organizations, we need them from technology companies. So we actually changed the whole way that we recruited. Right now, we're an amazing mix because we're in 210 countries. So actually the diversity in terms of the different nationalities in the company is huge. And women. And we actually are 50-50 women at entry level. And what this means is because we develop want out of their career. They want variety, and they want growth, and they want solving real-world problems today.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk, as the last question, a little bit about your visions for the future. Many in the industry, especially in fintech, think that the future will be completely cashless. Mm-hmm. Do you share that point of view?
I don't think that it will necessarily be completely cashless. I think that we're a long way from that today. Middle East and Africa is 98% cash. Latin America is 91% cash. Germany is 60% cash. Actually, Europe is 76% cash. So there's a long way to go to reach a completely cashless world. What I do see happening is, we're going to go to machine payments. I think the rate of electronic payments will accelerate. The rate of e-commerce is accelerating. And digital currencies, will come into play, are coming into play. There's Mint in Canada, which is a perfectly legitimate digital currency. Blockchain's going to be here, and it's going to probably be the mechanism that's used for to help world trade, move things around, because when you're in a trading environment, moving things from China to Europe or all over the world, so many different people touch that transaction that a single ledger solution's great. All of these things will happen, but I think they're going to happen at a different pace in different continents, and it will be, it will be an evolution, not a massive revolution.
And if you look at the surroundings right here, for example, we have a lot of fintechs and startup companies. What would you single out as the biggest challenge for Mastercard and its business model?
People have said to me, well, will the technology companies create a completely different business model from Mastercard? Yes, but the answer is we work with technology companies all over the world. Our business model is a network. We are an infrastructure player, and the more things that are connected to the network, the better things are. So we've been producing, new API layers and so on, so that we can work with the small digital players everywhere in the world. And obviously, we've been working with the big digital players like Apple, like Samsung, and so on, Amazon. And so actually, we believe that because we have that infrastructure play, we're in a strong position. And also, the other thing I'd say is building things in the digital world, you can do it very quickly. And one business model can replace another business model quite quickly. But if you think about how our network works, we're connected to 40 million physical endpoints today. Our goal is to be connected to 100 million physical endpoints, because people are still people, and they move in the physical world. So it's the convergence of digital and physical that make the network strong. And it's playing with all of the ecosystem, the governments, the partners, the tech players, and make the network strong. And so I think that there's a strong future for Mastercard. So do the analysts, of course, and that's why you see the market cap.
So on a personal level, you didn't invest in any startup, but in Mastercard.
On a personal level, sorry, what?
Did you invest in a startup or rather in Mastercard?
Well, I'm definitely invested in Mastercard. I'm very vested in Mastercard, of course.
Okay, so thank you very much, Anne, for joining me here.
Okay, thank you.